Assalamu alaikum. Today we are going to talk about ecology, environment and the organisms. Ecology is the study of interaction between organisms and their environment. What is an environment? Environment is the surroundings in which an organism is living. An organism is never living in an isolation. It have to interact with the organisms which are surrounding it, with the physical factors which are present around it, with the chemical factors which are present around it. So environment consists of other living organisms, water, the air currents, the soil, maybe the roads, the cats, the dogs around us. For example, if I am an individual, organisms have to interact with their environments. For example, if I am living in an area, there are various plants present in that area. There are other human beings present in that area. There are cats and dogs. There may be microscopic organisms, the bacteria, which can spoil my food, which can even make some foods for me. For example, we know that yogurt is produced by the bacteria from the milk. Every organism have to interact with its surroundings, both living surroundings and non-living surroundings. Environment provides the organism all those things which are required to live. That is food. Every organism gets food from the environment. Shelter. Every organism have to get the shelter, protection from the environment. For example, the human beings, which are the most advanced organisms, lives in houses. The cats and dogs, they have their own places on which they live. For example, a street. Birds live on the trees, sometimes for bringing up their kids. They have nests. The bears and the lions have their caves in which they live. Organisms also have to interact with other organisms which are present in the environment. So environment is everything present in the surroundings of an organism which is providing the organism with food, with shelter and with relationships. Environment is always changing. We know that even in a single day, temperature may change. In the morning, temperature is lower. When sun just has arisen. When sun goes up, temperature rises up. When sun again goes down, then the temperature rises down. At night, temperature may be more different. Seasons change. Winter comes, summer comes, harsh winter comes, spring, fall. Environments are always changing, even sometimes disastrously. For example, after a flood, the environment of the area may be entirely changed. After a flood, this is possible that all of the trees in a specific area are just say fallen down, and all the birds which were living on those trees are now homeless, just like the people of that area. So environment sometimes may be very favorable, sometimes it may be very hostile, that is unfavorable. What is the strategy of organisms? Organisms have to adapt to the situations. Different organisms have different properties, and according to their characteristics, their properties of life, they can survive in different types of environments. Organisms are best fit for their environment. There are different types of organisms and there are different types of environment. Every organism lives in that environment to which its characteristics are best fit. Otherwise, it will not be able to compete with other organisms of maybe the same species, maybe the different species, and it will die. Or maybe it have to migrate from that area. So, each organism is best fit to its surroundings, to its environment. Every organism always select to that environment in which its characteristics allows it to live. Otherwise, other organisms may compete with it, and either it have to die or it have to migrate. Now, environment consists of two types of factors if we generally divide them according to the living and non-living condition. We call them biotic factors and abiotic factors. Biotic factors are those factors which are living. In other words, biotic factors are the living organisms present inside the environment. The abiotic factors are all the other factors which are non-living part of the surroundings or the environment. The biotic factors includes animals, plants, all those small animals, the small plants, the trees, the herbs, the shrubs, the shrews, the moles, very large elephants. And the abiotic factors, they consist of light, air currents, the atmosphere, water, even temperature, pH, soil, all the other things present inside the environments which are non-living. The living factors or the living part of the environment may be microscopic, like bacteria, viruses, which are living in the environment, but they are not visible to our eyes because they are very small. But the human being can see them using a microscope, just like our very small cells. So the environment consists of the biotic factors and the abiotic factors. Biotic factors are the living factors, the living organisms. Abiotic factors, all the non-living things or all the non-living surroundings. What is ecology? Ecology is from ecos and logy. Ecology is the study of interactions of organisms with each other and with their non-living surroundings. So in ecology, we study the interactions of organisms with other organisms, maybe similar organisms, maybe very different organisms, and also their interactions with their non-living surroundings. For example, if a deer is living in a specific area, then it have to take its food from the environment, the grasses, maybe the small plants whose leaves it can eat, but it have to interact with the organism of same species like the other deers, because in a specific area grass may be limited. If there are too many deers, they have to compete with each other for food, and the one who is more strong can get that food, and other either have to migrate or maybe it die out of starvation. Those deers also have to interact with the tigers present in that area if they are present, because tigers are the predators which can eat upon the deers. So a deer which is living in an environment have to protect itself from the tigers or the other predators. For that, it have to adapt some strategies. This also have to interact with some other animals which may be large or small. It have to drink water. If there are few water bodies and if there is a less amount of water, then it have to compete even for water with other organisms. So the organisms have to compete for each and everything, their food, their shelter, for the interaction with other organisms, for each and every resource which is present inside the environment. Organisms also have to interact with their abiotic factors. Like for example, if temperature is so high, then the organism have to protect itself from temperature. Maybe they have to find shadows of the trees, if the trees are present. If the trees are not present, maybe they have to find out the caves if they are present, or some other type of shade, or maybe they have to adapt some other strategy. So every organism have to interact with the biotic factors and the abiotic factors present in the environment. Now the biosphere. Biosphere is the whole part of Earth, the planet Earth, which is covered with life. We say the bio, life, sphere, part of the Earth, the whole part of the Earth on which the living organisms are inhabiting. There are different types of areas on the Earth on which the living organisms can inhabit. In water, on land, and even in the air, like birds. Look at a diagram. It shows that the biosphere consists of 3 further spheres. Actually, these are not spherical, but these are just for an example. These are various parts of the world, of our planet Earth. The atmosphere, the hydrosphere, and the ecosphere. The atmosphere, the air. The hydrosphere, the waters. The ecosphere, the ecosystems. Air or atmosphere is actually part of almost all of the ecosystems. Hydrosphere or the waters, they are also parts of the ecosystems. Now, what is an ecosystem? Look at another diagram. It shows various organisms in interaction with their environment. You can see a big water body on which a man is rowing a boat. On the other side, there is a large fish. You can also see various small fish. You can see various plants which are submerged in that water. Submerged means some part of them is inside the water, and there are few which are totally submerged, which are totally present inside the water. There are lot many plants on the sides. There are rocks. There is an atmosphere, the air. There are clouds. There are trees. Areas like this, in which different types of organisms, the animals, the plants, the bacteria, the fungi, the algae, the other organisms, they are living with their abiotic surroundings. Water, atmosphere, rocks, soil, a system in which all of these organisms are living, that is, all the biotic factors are living in interaction with their abiotic factors and in interaction with each other, is called an ecosystem. So, ecosystem is an area in which the living organisms are inhabiting in interaction with each other and with their non-living surroundings. Have a look on another diagram which also shows a mountain, a small hill with different types of trees. Then there is a water body, and then the big water body making a lake. Then there is a stream. Then there are more trees. There are different types of animals present in it. And of course, there is soil, there are rocks, there is an atmosphere, there are animals, and there are plants. So this is an example of another wetland ecosystem. In Pakistan is rich in wetland ecosystems. We have various wetlands which are a very important part of Pakistan because they have diverse organisms. They have we say that they have a biodiversity. There are diverse forms of life present inside these ecosystems, and these organisms, this biodiversity actually gives a stability to the ecosystem. They make the ecosystem stable. Now there are different levels of organization in an ecosystem. An ecosystem consists of various levels of organization. The first level of organization in an ecosystem is a species. What is a species? Species is defined as all the organisms of same kind which are living in an area and which can interbreed, which can live with each other and can interbreed. Next level of organization in an ecosystem is a population. All organisms of same species living in an area. Next level is community. Various populations of different kinds living together in an ecosystem. And then ecosystem itself, interaction of the biotic factors in interaction with the abiotic factors and with each other. The next level is biome. Biome is different various types of ecosystems present on different areas of the land on the earth which are similar. For example, if the grassland ecosystem exists in Pakistan, then the grassland ecosystem, like of similar type, not of same but similar type, may be present in Australia, maybe in United States, and at so many other places. The ecosystems of same kind are called the biomes. We say, for example, the wetland biomes, the grassland biomes. Then comes the biosphere, the last level according to our information till now, the biosphere is the part of planet Earth which supports life, living organisms. Now we just have a look on few diagrams and which are showing different levels of organization. You can see big type of parrots called macaws. These parrots are usually present in Australia, commonly called Australian parrots. In Pakistan, in various types, in various zoos in different cities, these parrots are present. Parrots are of same species. Human beings, they are also of same species. But these parrots are living in different areas, maybe in one area of the Australia or maybe in another area of Australia, but all of these belong to the same species. Next comes population. The human population. For example, population of Lahore. All the people which are living in Lahore is the human population of Lahore. Actually, we don't count our population of the other organisms like animals, but a recent report says that in Germany, when they count their population, when they do census, then they count the human beings, the cats, population of the cats and the dogs in a city. So, human beings makes one population. For example, all of the people living in Lahore, all of the people living in Pakistan, all of the cats living in a forest, all of the dogs living in a forest. So population is the organisms of same species living in a particular area at a particular time. Now we look at community. Look at another diagram which shows that different types of organisms are living together in an area. There is a water body, a pond, in which there are small organisms which are phyto and zooplankton. These are microscopic or very small in size. The fish eats them, and there is a more big fish on the other side is eating that fish which is eating the zoo and the phytoplankton. Then there are plants in which these fish are also interacting, because these zoo and phytoplankton and some bacteria which is present in the sediments, as you can see in the diagram, when these fish or the zoo or phytoplankton, they die, they go to these sediments and their dead bodies are degraded by these bacteria. So the bacteria, the phytoplankton, the zooplankton, the plants, the fish, the big fish, they are all living in the same place and they are interacting with each other. We call this a community because all the organisms of different species, for example, this fish which is eating the phytoplankton or zooplankton is one species of fish. The big fish, which is a carnivore fish, which belong to another species. Then the phytoplanktons belong to another species, the bacteria belong to another species. All of these organisms, all of these populations are interacting with each other. We call it a community. Then have a look on an ecosystem. Example of a grassland ecosystem. Ecosystem in which the living factor are interacting with each other and they are interacting with their physical surroundings. This diagram shows that there is abiotic material, the soil. Then there are different types of plants which are growing in that soil. The temperature of environment also affect all of these organisms. Then there are producers, the plants, which makes their energy using the sunlight. Sunlight is another abiotic factor which is providing the energy to the ecosystem through plants. Cows, for example, the deers, they are eating the producers, the plants, and then they are themselves eaten by the carnivores. You can see a tiger. Tigers eats these cows or maybe the deers, and this is how the complex interactions in the ecosystems they are shown. So ecosystem is an interaction of biotic and abiotic factors in a specific area which share similar physical properties and chemical characteristics. Have a look on another picture which shows another ecosystem which have very long and large huge trees, and in front of these there are grasses. Let's have a look at another. This is an ecosystem which is present near to the very cold areas. You can see behind that there are mountains which are covered with snow, and in front of these there is a grassland. There are grasses which are growing in this particular area. Organisms which are living in this area are specific for living in that particular environment. Then the biosphere. The picture of the globe is showing in green and light green and dark green shades all of those areas where the living organisms are present. There is a distribution of life. This whole area is called the biosphere. And organisms in relationship with their environment. We use certain terminologies to describe the relationship of organisms with themselves and with the environment. The very first terminology which is used is called the habitat. Habitat of an organism is actually the physical location of an organism in which it normally lives. For example, you can see in the picture that a camel lives in a deserted type of area, an area which is like a desert. A tree, a large tree, may be the habitat of an owl. Many trees are habitats for different types of birds. Then there is another word used, niche. Niche is defined as the ecological role of an organism. Ecological role includes how its interactions with the environment, that where it do live, what is its habitat, how it gets its food, how it gets shelter, and how it interacts with the physical surroundings. So niche is actually the ecological role of an organism. Look at the diagram below, which shows two camels, and on these two camels, two men, they are traveling. You can see that camels are moving, and they are covered by their owners by a cloth. That is, their owners are actually helping them to cope with the temperature. Niche is the ecological role of the organism. That is, you can see that camel is in interaction with the human beings, and they are protecting it from the harsher environments and also providing it its food. So niche is the total ecological role of an organism, and habitat is the location of the place where an organism is living normally. Biotic and abiotic components of an ecosystem. Biotic components are the living components, consist of animals, plants, algae, fungi, bacteria, viruses, all of the organisms which are living. And the non-living or the abiotic surroundings, the components of the environment, the ecosystem, they includes air, water, lightning, soil, rocks, all of the things which are present in an ecosystem. Now the energy flow in an ecosystem. How energy enters in an ecosystem and how it circulates within the ecosystem is a very important topic. The energy in all of the ecosystems of the world comes through sunlight. The primary source of energy inside the ecosystem is always sunlight. There are organisms which are called producers, the plants or the photosynthetic bacteria or the algae, which have capability to convert the energy which is coming through sunlight into chemical form of energy, and they can also convert the inorganic chemicals present inside the soil or inside their surroundings into organic form of chemicals. So the primary source of energy in an ecosystem is sunlight, which enters in the ecosystem through plants, the producers or algae, which are also the producers, or the photosynthetic bacteria, all those organisms which can conduct the photosynthesis. We call them autotrophs, the organisms which can utilize the sunlight to make their energy and their food. We call them autotrophs. Auto, themselves, by themselves, trophs, food, that is, they can make their own food. The next level of energy flow is called the heterotrophs or the consumers. These are the organisms which cannot carry out the photosynthesis. They need an organic source as their food to take energy from the environment. Animals, for example, animals are consumers or the heterotrophs. The heterotrophs, the animals, the consumers, have to get their food primarily from the plants, the producers or the autotrophs. And among the consumers, there are classes, there are groups. There are three major groups among the consumers called the herbivores, carnivores and the omnivores. Herbivores are those organisms which eat up the plants, that is, they eat the autotrophs. These herbivores, for example the deers, they eat up leaves of the plants. The cows, they eat up the grasses, which are also different types of plants. Then these herbivores are eaten up by other organisms called the carnivores. For example, the lions, they eat the cows. Then the omnivores. Omnivores are the organisms which get a food which consists of both animal and plant material. For example, human beings, us, we are omnivores. We eat proteins, we eat meat, we also eat plants in the form of vegetables, beans. So we are omnivores. So consumers are divided into herbivores, the plant eaters, carnivores, the meat eaters, and omnivores, which eat both meat and vegetables. Now the pyramids in ecology. In ecology, we divide or we show these trophic levels in the form of a pyramid. This pyramid shows, as you can see in this diagram in front of you, that the producers, the plants, comes at the basic level. First of all, according to energy flow, they have to produce food. They have to get the energy from sunlight and convert it into the chemical energy and the carbohydrates. Then the consumers, for example animals, have to eat up the producers. And then the third level, the decomposers. The decomposers are the organisms which live upon or which feed upon the dead organic matter. So the decomposers, when the animals and the plants, both of these die, or their some parts fall apart, for example the fallen leaves, the fallen branches of the trees, and everything that is now dead, for example a dead animal, a dead plant, these are eaten up by the decomposers like bacteria and the fungi, and they convert them into smaller ingredients which are absorbed by the soil, which are kept inside the soil, and the producers, the plants, again can take them up into this from these simpler forms and utilize them for their life processes. So it means that this energy flow ultimately results in a cycle. At the base you can see that producers are the larger part of the pyramid. They have to be more because they have to produce energy, they have to produce food, and then they have to provide food to the next level, consumers. Consumers, they are fewer in comparison to the producers. And then the decomposer, they are more few, they are more less. Their number is lesser than that of consumers. So this makes an ecological pyramid. Then have a look on next diagram. It shows you the producers, grasses at the base level. Then it is dividing the consumers into its ingredients, into its parts. The herbivores, you can see a rabbit, a grasshopper, a mouse, which feed upon the grasses. These are called herbivores, or these are also called primary consumers. That is, they are the consumers which directly have to feed upon the plants, the producers. The next level, these are called the primary carnivores, or these are called the secondary consumers, which feed upon the herbivores. You can see the snakes which feed upon the rats and the mice, and the rats which eat upon the grasshopper. Then the upper level is the secondary carnivore. Secondary carnivore is a carnivore that eat upon another carnivore. For example, the owl, which may feed upon the rat, and the rat itself feed upon an insect. This is called these are called the tertiary consumers. So primary consumers eat upon the grasses, the plants. They are also called herbivores. Secondary consumers are primary carnivores, and the tertiary consumers are the secondary carnivores. And then comes the decomposers. We also use the term food chain. Usually feeding relationship between organisms exists in the form of a chain. For example, look at a diagram which shows that there is a grass which is taking the energy from sunlight for its life processes. This is eaten up by a grasshopper. Grasshopper is eaten up by a rat or a mole. That rat or mole is eaten up by an owl. This makes a food chain. Grass, grasshopper, rat, and the owl. The relationship between these the organisms are not as simple as a food chain. We actually simply describe a uniform or a single way, a single direction relationship between the organism by a food chain, but actually these relationships are very complex. These could not be explained by only food chains. Let us have a look on a next diagram which shows you a food web. Actually, relationship between different trophic levels are complex because we know that there are diverse forms of organisms present in an environment. You can see that grass is present as producer. There are different types of herbivores which eat it up. The rabbits eat it, some mice eat it, and some grasshoppers eat it. So there are different types of herbivores. Then there are primary carnivores. Snakes eats the moles, and grasshoppers are eaten up by the big rats, and owl eats up the snakes and the rats both. So the relationship between these, we can make different food chains out of this complex network. This complex network is called a food web because the more the diversity, the more complex relationship of feeding will exist between the organisms. and these will not be able to explain it by the food chains, and we have to make the food webs. We call this complex interaction of feeding between organisms a food web. Now we talk about various factors that can affect an environment. There are different types of physical factors that affect environment, like air. The air currents, as we know, they can change or modify the temperature of an environment. Air in the form of wind, if it is a very strong wind, it can disturb the trees, the soil. It can move the soil from its place and move it to another part, particularly in soil and the soils in deserts, or the sand in desert actually is moved from one part to another part by the wind, because wind is blowing so fast. The lightning is also a very important factor, because lightning can destroy the life at many places. It can destroy some habitats of different organisms. Then the water. Water is also a very important factor, because water is critical for life. Living organisms need water, and they have to obtain water from the environment. So water is also a very important factor. Then comes the human interference itself. Humans also always interfere with the environment, because they are progressing. They are going ahead. They have to make different things. They have to get different things from environment, and they have to make the things of their need. The industrial growth has disastrously affected environment. Human beings are making different types of industries. These industries, when they produce some important things, they also produce many byproducts or waste products. These waste products have to be dumped somewhere, and that dump is the environment, because industries have to return their effluents, their byproducts, their waste products back to the environment. Mostly these waste products are disastrous for the environment. Many of the waste products do have heavy metals in them, which are heavily dangerous for the crops or the plants living in that area. These are also very dangerous for the birds and the animals if they are added to the runoff waters and they go to the ponds or to the rivers. They may cause heavy loss of biodiversity. These industrial effluents or the waste products may be solid, may be liquid. In both cases, they are disastrous. They can damage the biodiversity of different ecosystems. We have solution for it. The wastewater plants. Industries, by the rules of most of the governments, have to install a treatment plant for their waste. Before they remove their waste and send it to the environment, they have to clean up that waste with the help of a treatment plant. The function of the treatment plant is actually to convert the toxic materials into very less toxic or non-toxic forms and then send it to the environment. So human beings, they create problems and they can solve them, but if they want to. So industrial effluents, they are a problems. They can cause contamination of waters, of lands, but these could be solved by human effort. Look at a diagram, or look at a picture actually, of a solid waste produced by an industry, a liquid waste which is produced by industry and is dumped into the soil. If some birds drinks this water, they may die if this water is not cleaned up. If this water is cleaned up, then it may be okay, may be all right. Then the deforestation. Deforestation is also a big problem for the ecological systems, the ecosystems. Say deforestation means cutting down the forests. As we know that human beings, they need wood for their different use. Wood is used in making furnitures. It is used in making buildings. It is used in making our doors, our windows, the beautiful furnitures. It is also used as the firewood. Human beings cut down the forests for wood, cut down the trees, which is very disastrous for the ecosystem, because these trees may be the habitat of various birds. If the trees are cut down, where will those birds go? Either they have to migrate or maybe they die because they cannot survive without it. There may be other birds which eat upon those birds. They will die. And there are different types of insects on which these birds were feeding upon. For example, if a bird is feeding upon the grasshoppers and its habitat is destroyed and they die, then the grasshoppers will increase in very large quantities, and maybe they eat up all our crops. So now remember the food chains and the food webs. If one organism is disturbed, it may disturb the whole of the food chain and even the whole of the food web, and this may result in a disaster or a problem for human beings themselves. The other cause of deforestation is the urbanization, urban spread. Human population is on increase everywhere, and due to accommodate that population, they have to live somewhere. They need houses, they need hospitals, they need places. The forests are cut down for this purpose. This is also a major cause of deforestation. So deforestation could be controlled by, number one, controlling the increase in human population, one thing, and secondly, if we are cutting down the trees, we can plant more trees. It is said that if you cut down one tree, you plant 10 more. If you cut down one tree, then after some years those trees will grow up and they will compensate. So a planning is required to handle this problem. The urban spread is one of the most important factors because the cities are expanding. The villages, we know that they can accommodate different types of habitats of birds and other animals and the plants. But for the cities, we have to make buildings, industries, schools, colleges, all of the buildings, which for which we have to cut down the trees and the plants. And when the human beings come there and they live there and they interact with the environment, all the natural populations, they are disturbed. There are different types of examples of that in the world. Even in Pakistan, now forests are reducing in their size because towns and cities, they are expanding. So urban spread is a threat to the environment, is a problem for the environment. Look at a picture which shows the urban spread towards an ecosystem. We can see that many houses are formed. A road is going in between them, and on the other side we can see an intact ecosystem which consists of, looks like a grassland and the mountains. But the urban areas or the town or the city is expanding towards that ecosystem. If this will expand just like this without planning, then that ecosystem after some time may be destroyed. The result again is the destruction of ecosystem will result in the instability of the environment. If trees are, for example, cut down, there are fewer trees, temperature of the area may rise. If there are few trees, many animals and organisms cannot live in that area, like different birds, many predator birds, and those predator birds may eat up all those insects which can later on eat up our crops. So if we diminish the trees, we are rising up temperature. If we are diminishing the habitats of animals, this may result in increase of the grasshopper or other insects which later on will eat up our crops, and then we will face a food shortage. So disturbing the environment means disturbing human life themselves, by themselves. Another way of disturbing the environment is like construction of dams and the waterways, that is huge constructions. These huge constructions can also disturb the environment. The dams are built upon rivers, or maybe they could be built upon canals. If they are built upon rivers, they will disturb the whole biodiversity of the river's ecosystem, because fish are living in that ecosystem. For example, the large fish, they have to move from one place to another place in that ecosystem. That is, they have to move from like this part of water to another part of water which is miles away. And if a dam is constructed in between, they cannot move from this place to another place. Maybe that is the place of their breeding. It means that by constructing these dams and the waterways, maybe this is possible that we are disturbing the biodiversity, but we also have some solution for it. We can make certain areas in our dams from which those fish can move, and we can make those fish adapt to that particular situation, that they don't move through the whole of the river and they move from a waterway, from a side. If the fish, this particular fish is disturbed, maybe there are other fish which this fish is feeding upon. There are maybe in that particular water body small invertebrates or phyto or zooplankton which that fish eat, which is disturbed. If the population of that fish is diminished, then those organisms will increase in their numbers because they are not eaten. And this may disturb the whole ecosystem of the river. So we can make a solution. That is, if we are making a dam, look at the biodiversity and find out ways in which we can conserve that biodiversity and we can make the dam. Remember that loss of biodiversity will result in the instability of ecosystem. For example, if our river is full of phytoplankton and zooplankton, then if we collect that river in a water body like a lake of a dam, this water may be not as suitable as it was previously for our agriculture or maybe for making electricity. So we are creating problem for ourselves. We have to solve it before time by planning. So look at a diagram which shows human impact on environment. Tourism, agriculture, runoff pollutants, maybe from agriculture industries, maybe from agricultural feeds, the urban development, the shipping, the fishing, the aquaculture, the coal mining and the processing, different types of minings of different metals, maybe mining of coals and so on. Everything actually in any way or the other affects the environment, but this could be handled with planning. Look at a picture. Tourism. People are going to a very beautiful area, but what they are throwing, different types of plastic bags, maybe other wrappers here and there, and these things are disturbing the environment. We are going to the environment, we are disturbing it by tourism. Agriculture. Agriculture also affects the environment. When we grow crops of our own interest, then some crops may be exhaustive. For some crops, we are adding different types of fertilizers. We have to keep in mind while doing agriculture, the natural balance of the ecosystem should be maintained. If this is not maintained, then later on maybe the ecosystem is changed and we ourselves may not be able to grow our crops that well what we are doing today, maybe without precautions. Another picture, agriculture. Now the natural factors. There are a lot many natural factors which also affect the environment, like the floods, the earthquakes. Many of these factors lead towards total or partial habitat destruction. For example, if an earthquake comes or a flood comes, it may result in in destruction of lot many trees, and those trees may be the habitat for different birds. If the trees are destroyed, the habitat of those birds is destroyed and they are homeless, just like the people of that area. Sometimes these are so disastrous that they change the whole ecosystem of that particular area. Just remember the floods in just a few months back in the Sindh. Just remember a very big earthquake in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area just a few years back, which actually changed the whole of the ecosystems of that particular area. And those populations which were surviving there were no more able to survive. And the people who are working on the ecology have to protect them. Look at a picture which shows a tree just fallen due to an earthquake, a natural disaster. If this tree is a habitat of different birds, maybe some reptiles, maybe squirrels, then all of those animals will become homeless. Their habitat will be destroyed. If lot many trees are fallen like this, then this may result in the loss of habitat of all those birds. They may have to migrate or they may die. That is, they become extinct from that particular area. Look at another picture of same kind by a flood. We can see that another habitat destruction. Lot many trees are fallen. Now, importance of environment for the healthy living of an organism. Why environment is so important? Very simple. Organisms have to get food, shelter, and other resources from the environment. We have to get our food. All the organisms have to get their food from the environment. Either they are producers, or they are consumers, or they are decomposers. If the environment is stable and healthy, then the organisms will be easily getting their food from the environment and surviving. If the environment is disturbed or the balance of environment change, it may result in the loss of habitats for different organisms, which may lead towards extinction of different types of organisms from that area. And we know that if one organism is disturbed, a big food web will be disturbed by its absence, because all the organisms who feed upon that organism, or all those organisms which are eaten up by that organism, all will be disturbed. So a balanced ecosystem is required for the healthy living of organisms. This was about the ecology, the environment, biotic and abiotic factors of an ecosystem, and various factors which affect the ecosystem. I hope all of this is become clear to you. We will meet in the next lecture. Thank you.